Greetings, viewers. My name is Michael Wright, and I am in Norman, Oklahoma, standing on my back porch. It's nighttime. You won't see very much in the way of video, but that's not important. What's important is the sound that you are hearing, and the sound is the barking dog nuisance right next door. Barking dogs have been a part of my life since 1985, and they have caused me many problems, and as you can see, they're still here. I've lived in 4 different neighborhoods where I have suffered from barking dog nuisances. In the late 90s, another noise problem emerged in Norman, and this was the so-called boom cars, the young adolescent jerks who drive automobiles with very loud stereos and with their bass amplifiers cranked up very loud. Norman has a noise control ordinance and an animal control ordinance, and the barking dog nuisances are prohibited by both of these ordinances, but enforcement is a joke. It's almost non-existent. In the 90s, I had a very productive enterprise in a home office, but the noisemakers made it impossible for me to work in a home office. I could not focus my thoughts because of their continuing interruptions. In the 90s, I won 4 federal grants from the Small Business Innovation Research Program from applications I had written from a home office. And if you'll click on More to the right of the video screen, just click on More and read the text, and I provide a link there to a news article about my grant-funded research. Another problem which needs to be addressed is the health hazards of sleep deprivation. This dog woke me up last night at about 2 a.m. with a barking episode. He had 7 more episodes over a 2-hour period and deprived me about 2 hours worth of sleep in the middle of the night. Now, what are the health consequences of sleep deprivation? The first problem is obvious, that's fatigue. Fatigue leads to accidents and diminished productivity. The next problem is that sleep deprivation leads to immune suppression, and immune suppression then invites infectious diseases. Another problem, which hasn't received much attention, is that sleep deprivation is now starting to be recognized as a risk factor for cancer. And here's how. In the middle of the night, when we're supposed to be sleeping very soundly, the body manufactures an important cancer-fighting hormone. And when you're not asleep, the body is not doing that work. Elevated prevalence of cancers has been found in graveyard shift workers because they're not sleeping at night when they should be. Another problem is that deep sleep is the time when our body is involved in cell maintenance and cell replacement. Every 7 years, all the cells in our body are individually replaced over that time frame. But if this process is disrupted by sleep deprivation, that can produce hazardous consequences, because cancer, after all, is abnormal cell growth. Now, you might be asking the question, why do dogs bark? Isn't it natural for dogs to bark? The answer is no. Dogs don't have to bark. If the dog is adequately trained and receives adequate care from its owner, it will not be a barking nuisance. I consulted an animal behavior expert in Oklahoma City about this. Her name was Sally Bornstein, and she wrote for me a 3-page opinion answering the question, why do dogs bark? And the most common reason, she said, was neglect. After all, we have domesticated dogs for at least 2,000 years. They depend on humans for food, and when they are abandoned and left alone for long periods of time, like this dog, they get anxious, and they express their anxiety through barking. Many people in Norman treat their dogs as though they were little more than animated lawn ornaments. They don't pay attention to them, they don't let them indoors, they don't take them for walks, and this is the result. this is unfair to both dogs and to the neighbors of the barking dog nuisance. Some people will try to excuse it by saying that they're watchdogs, and the animal behavior expert says, no, this is not the way to have a watchdog. If you want a watchdog, you bring him indoors, and if a burglar enters the house, the watchdog will attack. He will bark. He will awaken the owner. So the watchdog excuse does not hold water. Finally, I advise people who are thinking about moving to Norman, think again. If you move to Norman, you will be at risk of losing your right to simply walk in your house, close the door, keep the noise away, engage in reading or study or listening to music or resting or sleeping. You will be at risk of losing that right because of noise pollution. Particularly if you are a retired person on a pension. Don't bring your money to Norman. They don't deserve it. So I thank you for listening to this, and I invite messages from others who are suffering problems from noise pollution. And so for the time being, I'll bid you farewell.